Morning, morning. They made a special platform for me. I get to break it in. You guys are in trouble. We may be here till 2. We're doing a series, see if I can get this to work, called Marching Orders. And Mike talked about moving out. Joel talked about moving in. Maybe I had that reversed, but and they brought the notion that Jesus came and he called us to a couple of different things. And move in, move out. And then today I'm going to talk a little bit about move over. I'm going to start, though, by reading today's passage. You have it in your worship folders. One of my favorite books, matter of fact, this old Bible me and Lori took to Yellowstone, or to Glacier National Park. I preached through Ephesians, so it just opens up automatically on its own to Ephesians. And let me read what verses 11 through 18. Therefore remember that formerly you were Gentiles by birth and called uncircumcised by those who call themselves the circumcised, that done in the body by the hands of men. Remember that at that time you were separate from Christ, excluded from citizenship in Israel and foreigners to the covenants of the promise, without hope and without God in the world. But now, in Christ Jesus, you who were once far away have been brought near through the blood of Christ. For he himself is our peace, who has made two one and has destroyed the barrier, the dividing wall of hostility, by abolishing in his flesh the law with its commandments and regulations. His purpose was to create in himself one new man out of two, thus making peace, and in this one body to reconcile both of them to God through the cross, by which he put to death their hostility. He came and preached peace to you who were far away, and peace to those who were near. For through him we both have access to the Father by one Spirit. So this morning you're going to hear me say a number of times, move over. Move over. When we first started the church, we did a small group ministry, and we did most things via small group. And one of the ideas that I loved was we always did the small group with the empty chair in mind. Move over. Move over. We're not called to be a holy huddle that's closed to people who are different than us. Move over. Create space for that newcomer, that new foreigner, that new alien that will be coming into faith. God calls us to move over. I'm going to talk about 3 things. Move over because he is our peace. 1. Move over because through his body we're made one. Move over because through Christ's sacrifice in his life, we have access to the Father. Simple. Let me start with a story. It's Thanksgiving, and this passage is used a lot in terms of racial relationships, and so I'm going to tell you a story that has to do with Thanksgiving at my house. I grew up in Denver, Colorado, and by virtue of skin color and lack of income, I was a poor kid. And I grew up with this notion that white folks had it and we don't. Now, part of that reason that was is because we never saw white folks in our neighborhood. For some reason, they didn't move in. Can you explain that? They didn't move in. it might have been that there was a little hostility between the two of us. But I remember the year that this family called the Swensons moved in downstairs below us. Now, we thought that was funny because it was poor white folks, Terry. We'd never seen poor white folks before. We didn't know what they looked like. We didn't know what they smelled like. We was always looking in their window. They didn't have no furniture. Mom drank a lot. The kids were wild. We would look in the windows. And finally, there was someone worse than us. You hear what I'm saying? Move over. But when you're in a huddle, you don't move over. You don't move over. You blame or you hurl, you assassinate, you objectify. You don't move over. So the Swensons moved in. We weren't moving over. We were laughing. Till Thanksgiving. Now, you got to understand, Thanksgiving, we couldn't afford turkey and dressing and that kind of thing, so the church gave it to us. So when the church gave it to us, we got a big old giant turkey. Big old giant turkey. My grandma would go buy dressing, and she'd buy cranberry sauce in the can. Anybody do that? Yeah. Raise your hand if you like cranberry sauce in the can. Because in my house, we like cranberry sauce, the real cranberries. And I'd rather have cranberry sauce in the can even though it's poison. It's poison, right? So we had a dressing, set up table. It was great. Now my grandma, she was a fanatic believer. Crazy. Nuts. 5'2", well, we measured her. She was 4'11". You guys heard that story. We tape measured her. And she was crazy, though, for the Lord. So this Thanksgiving, we getting ready to eat. I'm the oldest in the family, so that inherits a lot of the duties. So she leans over to me and says, Jamie, now I'm probably 13, 14 years old. Jamie, I wonder what the Swensons is doing for Thanksgiving. I said, Grandma, we ain't having them people at our house. Sorry. And I'm going to tell you how I said it just because I'm different now. Ain't no white folks eating at our table. She said, Jamie, that ain't how I think here. She said, you need to go downstairs and check. I said, Grandma, I ain't going downstairs to see if them Swensons ain't coming up to our house. She said, boy. When she said boy, that means business. Right? So my grandma was 4'11", but she knocked my grandpa 6'4" out on his butt. And I was only 13, weighed about $110. I'm not messing with her. Okay? Go down and check on the Swenson. So I go downstairs reluctantly, knock on the door. Mom comes to the door, drunk. Little kids gathering around her. They all happy to see me now. I told you, we used to make fun of them, and they happy to see me. I said, my grandma said, y'all got to come up and eat. She said, what? I said, my grandma said y'all supposed to come up and eat. I just walked up the stairs, but they beat me up the house. Sitting at my table, my grandma said, move over. Move over. I don't care what color they are. I don't care their circumstance. Move over. This faith isn't ours. It's ours to give away. Move over. I walked up the stairs, looked at the table. It was all mixed up. Now, on my father's side of the family, it's all mixed up anyway. But with my grandmother, it was just us, brown-skinned kids, and my grandmother. That Thanksgiving I'll never forget. She said, Jamie, Jody, Felicia, move over. God has blessed us, and in today's language, I'm paying it forward. Move over. Paul's writing to the Ephesians, and he says, move over, first of all, because he's our peace. Peace is the word. That word is not the word shalom. The word in this context, peace, means wholeness. It means bringing together, making us whole. Paul writes that we were foreigners, aliens, and he added the word strangers. We were once that. Remember, he says in the passage, he says, therefore remember, formerly you were. I just got back from a training on healing racism. And I can't tell you what it was like 2 days to sit in mixed company and talk about the impact of being separate. Today, stuff's still going on. People are still looking at each other funny. The problem is, Paul wasn't talking to those folks outside the church. He was saying to the church, remember, you were once formerly an alien, a Gentile, a stranger to faith. So what happened in the church? Here's what I think happened. Paul preached the gospel of good news. Folks gathered together, glad to hear the good news. And got snobbery about it, got uppity about it, started to flex their privilege, started to lock people out. Paul said, remember, you once stood outside the door. Our job is to move over. He's our peace, which means that he makes us whole. It isn't our group that makes us whole. It isn't my wife or my kids or my job that makes me whole. It isn't my membership at Hope that makes me whole. It's my connection to Jesus, actually my connection to the Father through Jesus that makes me whole. It's also my connection to the body through Jesus that makes me whole. Jesus is asking us to do a couple of things when he says, Jesus is our peace. He is the thing that unites us. And so you're supposed to look at each other. I see some people back there with their Pittsburgh Steelers hat on. I see some folks with gray hair. I see some folks with curly hair. You're supposed to look at each other and see the difference and fall in love. But we're wired to look at difference and be afraid. I'm wired to look at difference. I notice in this room right now there's 2 dots, maybe, and there's some creamy dots in here. There's about 4 of us, 5 of us. And if I was going to be afraid, we'd have to run out. But I have decided, because of Christ, you guys are family. So God isn't calling us not only to appreciate one another and tolerate Randy. Tolerate him, man. Come on, dude. Like, you know, I don't know if I got mad love for him, but I put up with him. That's not what he's asking us to do. Christ is our peace. He's not asking me to tolerate Randy. He's asking me to do something radical, revolutionary. That is to love you as family. Randy is my brother, and I'm his. The skin tone doesn't change anything. Socioeconomic status doesn't change anything. We're family. And that's what Jesus is saying when he says, when Paul says he is our peace. We're family. Look around. Look at the ugly family we got in here. But we all family. We all family. Look around. We're family. The real bottom line is, if you cut any one of you in the room, you all bleed red. There's only 4 blood types and we're from the same species. But what happens is the opposite of peace is disharmony and separation. And it's based on the notion that somehow you and I, Randy, are different species. You come from planet Mars and I come from Xenon somewhere. And fear would lead us to believe that we're not even the same kind of human being. Move over. Make room for the people. See, I always thought grace looked like this. We're in a comfortable place. The drunk person or the addict or the destitute walks in the door and we move over. But I know there are church circles where the destitute, the alcoholic, the addict, the poor, the black, they come into church, the church doors close. They don't move over. Jesus is our peace. He says, I welcome them all. In him, the two are made one. Second point. Move over because Christ made one body by the cross. I want to tell another story. I was at this place called Reclaiming Youth International, and we were in a room. There were 350 people milling around. And this crazy lady, a friend of mine named Linda, she rings this bell, bing, bing, and we have to turn our backs and partner up, which I hate. I hate that stuff. Because you never know who you're going to turn around and talk to. People just wander around and she rings the bell and you got to stop where you are and the person right next to you, butt to butt, back to back. Nah, I ain't feeling this at all. So we do one round, we do 2 rounds. Bing, I stop. Somebody bumps up against me. She says, now turn around and introduce yourself. And I turn around and it's this white cat with a long ponytail and Nazi swastikas all over his arm. I'm thinking, oh no. You done paired me up. And you know what he said? I must have showed on my face. It must have showed on my face. I must have turned around and I must have did this. I must have did that. Because he looked at me and he said, yeah, I know. He said at another time in another life, we couldn't stand next to each other. And when you looked at the skin and seen the green ink on his arms and the red ink on his arms, you knew it was true. You knew it was true. We had a great conversation. And besides my turning and looking at him funny, things changed in an instant. We became brothers in this community. But he acknowledged, and I acknowledged with my reaction, that at one point in time, we couldn't be friends. He said to me, he said, Jay, I want to tell you something. 10 years ago, if you'd have turned around, I'd have had a knife or a gun to your back. I would have had to hurt you because of the way you look. So when we look at the passage, Paul makes this case. He says that Jesus is our peace, but he goes on to say, our peace who has made two one and has destroyed the barrier wall and the dividing wall of hostility by. Now let me give you a tone. He's thinking about the temple. And in the temple, there was an outer court where the Gentiles could mingle. And in that outer court, the Gentiles could come and congregate with Jews and blah, blah, blah. But as they moved in to the place where the Holy of Holies was, there were signs up at the outer gate that said, in lots of languages, so you knew, if you're not Jew, don't move past this doorway. Because if you do, you die. But Paul wasn't talking about a physical wall. He was talking about a mentality. Hostility, the dividing wall of hostility, is no longer a wall in our culture. It's a way we think. I want you to think about those people. Those people who live like that. Those people who come from there. Those people. We all have them. We all grew up. This country is raised on a strong dose of separation and arrogance. And even among us poor, we had those people. Problem was, there were often other brown-skinned people that we were talking about. Maybe it's a way a person lives. Maybe it's the gender, those people, those women, those men always. Those kids. I don't know what we're going to do with these kids. Those kids, the kids are just trouble. Whatever those people are. Jesus is saying the love of Christ and grace has made us one. And we're to look at those people outside the doors as if it's family barred from entry. And you would do whatever you needed to do to get family in here. We're to look at those people as family. Paul says he destroyed, abolished this dividing wall. I want to ask you this question. How? Do you read in here? Does this say he abolished it by stopping sin? Somebody tell me. Is that what it says? You sure? You sure? Does it say that? He abolished it by stopping sin. He abolished it by upholding morality. No. What's it say? It says he abolished in his flesh the law and its commandments and regulations for the purpose to create in himself a new man out of two. I'm going to give you the word for regulation and commandment, privilege. He abolished the dividing wall by destroying privilege. Privilege is what separates us. The perception of privilege. I have a nice fleece. You don't have a fleece. I don't like you because you don't have a fleece. Privilege. Privilege allows me to look down my nose at people. Privilege allows, in my house, everybody has an iPhone. I got a Windows phone. I guess I'm the minority in my family because I got a chump phone. Everybody else got the iPhone. They can look down at me for it. Some people have flip phones and I got an iPhone, so I can say, hey, I got a smartphone. You got a dumb phone. What's up with that? I can't even text to you because your dumb phone won't answer my smart message. Right? Right? Privilege. Jesus abolished privilege. He abolished it. He said, no one enters but through me. And no one enters except to accept the life I lived and the sacrifice I've made. And if you don't understand grace, you don't get in. If you don't understand who he is the doorway to get in. I don't care if you have an iPhone. You don't get in. I don't care if you're black and the president. You don't get in. Unless you understand a simple principle. Grace. God's love given to all people. Black, white, brown, gay, straight. For free. He didn't call us to judge. He called us to love. Move over. Make room. We are to preach peace to those people with issues. We are to preach peace to those people who are different. And we are to remember the cross. The cross is horizontal and vertical for a reason. It's at the cross. Christ made us one. What did he do? He reconciled us to God vertically. But more importantly, in this walk of life, he reconciled us horizontally, us to each other. I believe in the early church, there were people who got together who normally wouldn't get together. They looked like us. A motley crew of people stuck together like, dude, you see who I'm sitting next to? I would never sit next to this dude, but for the grace, I'm sitting next to him. He made one body. Now, the scriptures seem to indicate this. When I looked up new man, the language there seems to indicate a radical change. You invite Christ in, your heart becomes softened. You become aware of your own bias, and you become soft to it, and you begin to love people because they're his creation. And something happens because the word new man means a whole new kind of way of being. A whole brand new way of being. A whole new way of seeing. A whole new way of loving. Can you imagine loving without privilege? Indiscriminate love. Given to whoever, ask or don't ask. It's just available. My grandmother said, go get the Swensons and move over. That young man said to me, move over. I've moved over. Otherwise, I would have had to take you out. Move over. And lastly, the idea, and I think the most radical of the ideas, is that we're to move over because we all have access, Tammy, to the Father. We all have access to the Father. Now, that word access is an interesting thing. Jesus came and became our heavenly ambassador. It was his job. See, an emissary is someone whose job is to greet the people at the back door and take them to the king. That's what they do. Oh, dude, you here to see the king? Hey, you can't get in? I got you, man. Come on with me. You come in, you get access to the Father. A beautiful image for what Christ did. Christ came and lived on this earth as our peace. He treated people like he wants us to treat people. There was no privilege. He didn't walk in places and say, don't know, man. I don't know if I'm going to hang out with these people. He walked in and said, these are my folks. I love them. Whether it was the bar or Carnegie Hall. He lived that life. He lived it for two reasons. One, to attract us to him. Two, to show us what the Father's love was like. Do you know that he loved you before you knew about him? Do you know that? Loved you before you knew. When you came out, he said, oh, yeah, I love that kid. That's going to be a while before he comes home. I can't wait till Randy comes home. Love. Jesus' job was to make it so all of us could have backstage passes to the Father's chamber, to his study. Back door passes. Jesus meets us at the door and says, oh, y'all coming in to see Dad? Cool, come on with me. And Dad's waiting on you. Smile on his face. Helios. Friendly, merciful, joyful to see you. Some of you said, well, nah, because I got some stuff going on. Come in, dude. Come sit down right here. You don't know, last night, man, I was out smoking. Come in. Man, I got an attitude, man. I hate some people. Come in. Jesus, come on, man. Father wants to see you too. Indiscriminate love. So the challenge is this. Jesus came to give people who had been locked out because of privilege, the privilege to see the Father. Those of us who were locked out because of, I'm going to call it a spiritual apartheid, right? Some people hold the cards. I got the religious part right here. You got to get it from me. And Jesus said, man, forget that card, man. Come see the Father. And that spiritual privilege that was held by a few. That's why the image was those were far away and those were near. He joined them. Now, we can't forget because now we're the near. And we have to remember those who are far away. Otherwise, we're what Mike and Randy and Denise call holy huddle. We're them now. We're the insiders. We're the innies. And we got to remember we were once outies. And our heart has to be not to keep our spot in the church seat. Move over. So I'm going to challenge you. You leave today. I want you to think about Jesus is your peace. Move over. Jesus made 1 out of 2 at the cross. Move over. Jesus gave us access to the Father. Move over. Now, here's my question. God will lay on your heart people from your oikos, from your circle, to invite in. Why? Because they know the change in you the best. I go home to Denver, my friends say, Jay, what you doing, man? I said, you wouldn't even believe it, man. You wouldn't even. I told my friend Kenny. He said, what you doing, man? I said, man, I'm a psychologist now. A what? I said, psychologist. He said, man, I knew you was going to make it. That's why we called you Square Box, man. I never knew why they called me Box. That was my nickname, Box. I said, he said, he said, did you ever learn how to talk? I said, yeah, man. I do a lot of talking. That's what I do for a living. No way, he said. He asked me, he said, how many people you talk to? Like 3? I said, no, man. I've spoken crowds of 500, 600 kids. Nuh-uh. He said, next question. What happened to you? I said, Jesus, man. Jesus. That's what happened to me. He could see the change in me. I was a different guy. You know, I can't tell you I was a thug guy, blah, blah, blah. I wasn't one of those kind of people. But I came from the hood, right? And he could see a difference in me. And he said, I knew you was going to make it, man. I knew you was going to make it. A lot of my friends didn't make it. Privilege. They didn't have the privilege. They didn't have the opportunity. Now I have to come to believe that every step that I took was orchestrated by the Father. I'm here and stand here because he loved me so much. He gave his only begotten Son so he could be our peace, so he could join us together, and so that I would have access to sit at the Father, sit at Dad's lap anytime I want. Now, here's the deal. If that's good news, go tell somebody. Move over. Move over. Pray for the empty chairs in our church. Pray for the empty chairs in everybody's church. That if they don't come here, they find fellowship. That we as believers are graceful and merciful enough to move over and make room. Amen? We'll call up the worship team.
Go ahead and stand as we continue to worship.